Look around you. This horrible bunch of psychopaths are all begging to join up with me, but unfortunately for them, I can only take the best. And today, the best means whoever can kill you. Come on out, lads. It's initiation time. Here's your look at new McFarlane toys. DC Multiverse, Batman Arkham City, the Penguin. The Penguin is an eccentric criminal mastermind known for shady business dealings. Born into the wealthy Cobblepot family, Oswald was sent overseas for school as a boy. When his family hit hard times, Cobblepot immersed himself in criminal education on the streets of London. Years later, he re-emerged as the Penguin, a black market arms dealer in Gotham City, facilitating the illegal financial activities that fund most of the city's underworld. First, before we begin, I'd like to thank the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did take the time and provide the samples not only of the Arkham City Penguin, but also the Catwoman, the Batman we looked at before, and also the upcoming look at Ra's al Ghul, which will be the last figure that we'll look at before we look at the Build-A-Figure Grundy. Grabbing now the tape measure just to see how Penguin stands up or stacks up. Taking it right to the very top of his hat, which is non-removable, you're looking at the figure of Penguin only being about 5 3/4 of an inch tall, or he's roughly 14.5 centimeters in height. And like in Batman Returns, here's the Bat, here's the Cat, and here's the Penguin. Just to give you guys an idea of how Penguin is sized with the other two figures. If you count really his top hat, which once again is not removable, he goes only to about the eye level here of Catwoman. And yet, though, when he comes up to Batman, he's only going about to the shoulder area of Batman. So I think the sizing is appropriate here for Penguin. The parts for Grundy that come included with Penguin are his vest and also his head. You're probably asking yourself, why wouldn't you have looked at the arms, for example, that come with Ra's al Ghul? There's a reasoning for that. Because he does have the vest that goes over top of his torso, and then his arms are going to technically slide into the sleeve openings here, I would have had to have put this on first. I'm technically calling this a vest. I guess it could be just a jacket with ripped off sleeves, but either way, the rule would have to be the same. I'd have to put this on first before I decide to put the arms on, because I wouldn't be able to put this, well, you guys are all smart. You know how arms work. Grabbing, though, the figure of Grundy of where we left off, I actually did get those legs, I think, all the way in now, so they're going to stay perfectly in place. And, of course, for this, you don't have to necessarily even put the jacket on, although I think that finishes the look of Grundy nicely. You could really technically leave it off and then just put, of course, the arms on it, because the arms are not going to be sleeved arms anyways. But, of course, for me to finish the look for Grundy, I'm going to go ahead and take, then, the jacket, and that's just going to fit over top of his torso. And, of course, it's going to give him a much bigger triangular frame. I guess we can also go ahead and take his head. His head is always usually the last on these Build-A-Figures that I put on, well, literally last. Just because I always like to have this being the final thing I put on the figure, but I guess for this, I can make a little bit of exceptions. Here's what the head sculpt looks for Grundy. Very nice looking figure. The only thing I would say, though, I mean, I can make this statement without even having to add the arms. It looks like the skin of the coloring of his face is not quite the same coloring as the rest of his body. Other than that, though, I mean, we go ahead and put the head onto. Boy, that was a nice satisfying snap. And that's what we have for Grundy right now. I can't quite see all of it. The only thing I'm missing, of course, is the review of Ra's al Ghul, and the only thing that's missing with Ra's al Ghul is the not much needed arms then to complete Grundy. So we're going to move him off to the side for the time being. Let's have a look at the rest of the things that come included with Penguin. The figure also comes included with a black display stand. All right. Psst. Little DC logo printed down below, all done in black, and of course you got the one singular peg. I know I always end up saying the same things for these stands. You can only come up with so many clever things to describe a black display stand that we haven't already looked at before. What, 50, 100 times now already? But again, you've got that peg on the bottom, on the top, that's going to fit to the bottom just underneath his shoes. Shoes with spats. We're going to put that to the side. Actually, Penguin's not too bad for standing until you actually take his parasol and put it in his hand. We'll talk more about the perfect parasol in a moment. Didn't mean to spit all over you. Once again, for the figure card, we actually get ourselves source material instead of figure photography. It's a nice change of pace. These are the ones I get the more interested in. Although I do like the other cards that come included with the other figures, it's always nice to be able to get figure cards that actually have artwork on the front of it. Down below, of course, you got the Penguin from Batman Arkham City, though on the back it tells us, of course, the real name is Oswald Cobblepot. And, of course, you got yourself, in this case, a full-sized paragraph and a little less kind of an appetizer paragraph after that. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the rest of my cards. As mentioned, the figure also comes included with his umbrella. My umbrella, unfortunately, got slightly warped and sitting inside the plastic tray. I'm going to have to probably heat this up just a little bit and see if I can straighten it out. Other than that, though, it's a fine looking parasol. You can see there's the penguin head up at the top there, done nicely in a very cool gold paint. The gold is also on the end there as well. Now, this fits into his hand, but I'll tell you this, only one of his hands can actually hold the parasol. Anybody want to take a guess as to which hand that is? Yeah, you guys are smart. The other hand, unfortunately, literally on the other hand. I got to come up with a t-shirt one of these days that says literally on the other hand. His hand literally is bandaged up, so there's no way he'd be able to hold the parasol. The only thing he'd really be able to do is sort of just kind of wedge it in there, but that's not intended for that. It's intended instead for the other side. You can simply just take the parasol, take the umbrella. I know some of you are getting freaked out that I keep calling this a parasol. Sliding the umbrella, you can either have it displayed like that, or what you can also do too is you can have the hand twisted. You can have the hand holding the umbrella like that and just sort of propping him up. Kind of like the look of that also as well. I'm going to move that to the side. As for the figure itself, one thing I will say, I've already stated this a couple of times already, the top hat is not removable. You can't take it off. It's made of a softer plastic. So you got to wonder really what's going on with the sculpting underneath all that. But I think if you were just to remove it, you'd be rather disappointed to find that there's an unfinished painted head underneath all that. It doesn't have a band painted in here. In this case, it's actually just using the black plastic. The head sculpt is really nicely handled here. You've got, of course, the monocle on the one side, so you're unable to see his eyes through that. But at least you can make out his tiny little squinting peeper on the other. He does have more of a grimaced face. I don't know if he's going... That's Burgess Meredith's penguin, but still a neat-looking penguin head sculpt. Initially, I got to say, I wasn't so keen on the idea that he had this permanent expression on his face. But again, like, this is something I would expect also Penguin to be doing too. So, you know, it goes well with the head sculpt that they decided to go with. One thing also about this figure too is, while I couldn't help but look at this and see obviously Arkham City Penguin, looking though at the body proportions, shorter, squatter penguin after all, and looking at the type of jacket that he's wearing right now, I think at some point... This is me also thinking outside the box that perhaps if they did want to make more mold mileage out of this, use this and maybe release a Danny DeVito Batman Returns penguin. Anybody else thinking the same thing? I mean, obviously the jacket would have to, jacket would stay pretty much the same. The only thing they may have to do is retool the inside of the shirt. The jacket, by the way, is attached. It's married completely to the shirt underneath. You can't separate one from the other, which is about the only thing I'm a little disappointed with. I wish that the jacket could have also been a separate piece. It's nice when you have characters that have layered costumes, like layered clothing. But when you get a figure like this, it's just a shell of plastic. It would be nice ever so often to actually have like a jacket that was just separate, so it felt like a different bit of article of clothing than the shirt that, or in this case, than the vest that he has underneath. But I do like the sculpting, though, of the jacket. You can see up close and personal. It's got some really cool kind of texturing that they put onto the surface of that. Again, seriously, this could easily be a Danny DeVito penguin. Of course, the times that he's wearing this jacket, not necessarily the times he's walking around. What is he wearing in most of the movie anyways? It's sort of a onesie. It's like a baby onesie. Already mentioned, he does have the taped off bandaged hand. So again, you can't do too much with that, but it's accurate to the game. Of course, the other hand does all the job of holding all the accessories. And of course, he's got the shorter, squatter, very tiny little penguin legs. Just to move that out of the way. I don't know, again, looking at this also kind of reminds me of like the DC Multiverse. I guess it was the DC Universe Classics penguin that at some point, I got to really get around to looking at those DC Multiverse figures, the DC Universe Classics figures. What were they even called? DC Superheroes? DC Universe Classics, one of those. The penguin had a very similar sort of lower leg like this. And of course, he does have the spats on tops of his shoes, with the pegs noted also on the bottoms of his feet. Seriously, though, Batman Returns Penguin. Stop talking about that. Anyways, let's look at the articulation here on Penguin. First, we'll look at his head sculpt. It does rotate all the way around. The downside, though, to rotating all the way around is it does pop off frequently from the neck. Obviously, someone's trying to tell us that you're not supposed to take a human head and rotate it all the way around. I'm going to pop that back into place. It's easy to come off, but it's also easy to put back on too. So if you do twist it too far, flying too close to the sun perhaps, and the head does pop off, again, you're just going to pop it back onto the ball joint. But he does technically have a dumbbell ball joint. So essentially, you got a ball joint at the top, right? Kind of if you were to see through his face, and then he's got a ball joint down below. Between those two, he actually moves his head quite a lot for considering a fellow like the penguin. You wouldn't think that he'd have so much posability in his head, and yet quite the contrary. You can do all that, just not rotate it all the way around. Arms do come out at a full 90-degree angle bend. If you want to get those penguin hugs going, you can get them in now. Arms rotate also all the way around. He has a swivel in his bicep. Double hinge on the elbow. That's the case on both of them also as well. And the hands also rotate all the way around. All the way around. His torso is about the only thing that's a little bit more limited. He unfortunately has to sort of forfeit. He does have a ball joint down at the bottom here, but I don't know. I don't suspect there's going to be any ball joint happening here underneath the jacket, the jacket and the vest that he's got. So he does have at least a ball joint. That's more than enough for a character like Penguin to be able to move around. What he's doing right now as a figure is probably would be a lot more than what he would be actually doing as a real character. I don't think Penguin moves around this much. His legs do split out. You, of course, take the legs and move them forward and back. There's a little bit of course, reluctancy because, of course, he's got the longer jacket. He does have a single hinge on the knee, which also allows the lower leg to rotate. And there's also the ankle articulation, slight more ankle articulation. Because he has the longer length of his cuff, it's a little kind of harder to get in there and move the ankles back and forth. But they're in there. They're in there. And then finally, he does have the toe articulation as well. Nice looking penguin. I like the look at this one. As I already mentioned earlier into this review, initially I didn't really like the face. Always having grimaced teeth like this, I would think after a while it'd get a little bit tiresome on a figure. But I gotta say, for Penguin, it works quite well. Why is he not standing? Let's go ahead and just make use of the display stand. They're there after all. Let's go ahead. There we go. That can be better. That's going to be a lot better. And then again, we can bring in Catwoman. And we can bring in Batman. Of course, bringing back in the trio from Batman Returns, my still favorite Batman movie. Penguin does quite well to blend in and actually fit in well with the rest of the other two figures we've had a look at. The only one that we still have yet to look at is Ra's al Ghul, which his review will be coming up after. Of course, he will also be finishing through the process of looking at that figure, completing the Solomon Grundy, which will have also his standalone video. But again, I really like the look of Penguin. He's limited in articulation. He unfortunately forfeits a jacket because it's all part of the same mold, but still a nice looking penguin to be putting on display with. Again, now the two figures we've already had a look at. The irony to the Penguin is that both him and Catwoman, the only other release we've gotten from McFarlane's team for a Penguin or a Catwoman, were both featured in the Batman movie. That's the only other time we've gotten a Penguin or a Catwoman figure. So now this marks technically the second time a Penguin figure gets released under the DC Multiverse banner. I hope, though, it's not the last time, because I think, again, there's mileage to be made from this mold. I did already mention the idea. I dropped the idea into the air, and I'm hoping McFarlane's team will be able to catch it with their butterfly net. Re-release this, please, as Danny DeVito's Penguin. Of course, it would have to rely on a brand new head sculpt. That would have to be one thing that would have to be changed right away. They'd have to retool the undersection of his jacket. But his jacket would stay the same. His pants, I would think they probably could do something to keep those pants somewhat the same. And of course, you could also keep the shoes the same too. So getting a Danny DeVito Penguin perhaps could also lead down the rabbit hole of getting eventual movie tie-in figures. And Batman Returns would be really high on my list for figures I would like to see them do down the road. Again, making use of this mold. Penguin also comes included with a parasol. Now, in this case, for displaying him in final looks, I've got him actually using it more as a cane and less like a weapon. At any given point, I'm sure he could easily just reach that off from the ground and then fire it off at you. What would this Penguin have? Bullets? Gas? I mean, obviously, if it was Burgess Meredith's Penguin, he'd be using it for much other things, much more ridiculous things than the video tie-in Penguin. But still, it's nice to see that he actually comes included with an umbrella. It goes hand in hand. You got to have Penguin with a top hat. You got to have him come included with an umbrella, and it's nice to see that the figure comes included with both. Figure does have some difficult time. I know I did say at the beginning of this review I had no issues really with the Penguin, but sure enough, it always works out this way. Murphy's Law. As you get near the end of the review, you're, of course, wanting to pack up the shop. I know people all want to go home and do the other things that they had planned for the rest of the day. And, of course, when you're trying to put the figure down and wrapping up the things with the review that you want to talk about, that's when Penguin, of course, did want to give me a little bit more trouble. But, of course, again, you've got the display stand. It's there. McFarlane's team are one of the few companies that still include display stands with their figures. And it's one of the things I really like about them, the fact that they still take the time. Whether you've seen this stand one time, you've seen this stand 100 times, whether the stands still stay the same, it's nice to see that a company still takes the time to include it with their figures. But what do you guys think of Penguin? Let me know down below in the comments section. And what do you think they could also get more mileage out of this mold with? Perhaps, again, a classic-looking Penguin? I don't know. The lower legs and again the feet, they probably just could literally just use that carbon copy over to a classic looking penguin as well from the comics. There's definitely a lot of potential with this short little fellow known as the Penguin. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at McFarlane's team that did provide this sample of the DC Arkham City Penguin, which leaves, by the way, one last figure to look at, and that's Ra's al Ghul. Of course, with that, we'll also be completing Solomon Grundy, and the more I think about it, the more I think, yeah, I'm going to have Solomon Grundy as a separate review. There's a lot I want to talk about with him, and of course, I'm going to want to also bring in some much larger DC Multiverse figures so I can compare along with Solomon Grundy. The key to it, though, making sure, of course, you're not missing out on anything that's going on this channel by shamelessly plugging the fact that you can, first of all, if you like this video, hit it with a like. It also helps to grow this channel. And also, if you want to stick around and see more from the content on this channel, then make sure you're hitting the ever-crucial subscribe button, you're hitting the ever-crucial bell notification, and you're ever-crucially keeping your peepers peeled and coming back to this channel on a regular basis. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.